Hello, hello. Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to give it a few seconds. It looks like numbers are still climbing, so we don't want to get started before we have everyone with us. Good afternoon to you, Mike. How are you?
I'm doing just fine today. And are you staying warm? Because it's been kind of cold recently.
Has been super cold. I mean, for a Californian,
Mm,
right?
Right. Very cold, almost freezing.
Yeah. I was at my daughter had a basketball game last night outside, and it was just
Oh my God. In this
freezing.
weather? Oh,
Yes,
no, this should,
freezing.
yeah. At least they were moving. You weren't.
I know. My teeth
Yeah.
are chattering.
So good afternoon, everybody. Go ahead, Lauren.
All right, cool. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Our numbers have steadied. So let me go ahead and share my screen and we will get started. Mike, how's everything on your end? Are you able to see my slides okay?
Yeah, we're all good.
Okay, cool. Here we go. Good afternoon again, everyone. Very nice to see you. Thank you for joining us. My name is Lauren Simpson, and I'm with the SBDC, or the Small Business Development Center. We're a national program with over 1,000 locations across the country, and we offer no-cost services to local small businesses. Our services are at no cost to those small businesses because we have received funding via your taxes. So thank you very much. For those of you who are interested in being more connected with our program, please go to any of the centers that you see listed on the map in front of you. Please note that we serve the Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. Again, those red waymarks are where our centers are located, excuse me. You'll see that we are all the way out in Camarillo, all the way out in Santa Clarita, over to Pasadena, we're in Laverne. We're throughout Los Angeles, the South Bay as well, all the way down to Long Beach. So if you are, again, within the Santa Barbara, Los Angeles, or Ventura counties, please get in contact with us. You want to do so because we offer no cost business advising and we offer virtual trainings, again, at no cost. So when it comes to the business advising, you're able to sit one-on-one via Zoom for now with one of our business experts. And so we have experts within the fields of finance and taxes, i.e. Mike and GB who host this session, as well as, and that does not limit their expertise. It's way beyond those two topics. But again, it's finance, there's taxes, there's marketing, and then there's digital marketing, there's business plan creations. And if you're still ideating, you're trying to figure out what you want to begin, or if you're looking to grow, please be sure to get in contact with us because we have people for you to work one-on-one with. Now, when it comes to our virtual trainings, you're able to receive knowledge that way as well. And so those are comprehensive workshops. Again, we've created them to assist you in adapting and or growing. Contact us today. We cannot say that enough. We'd love to hear from you. You can go via phone and reach us at 866-588-7232. Or if you'd rather online, go to smallbizla.org/new client. For those of you who have been lucky enough to reach us and you're outside of our service area, don't worry. You can go to americassbdc.org/find your SBDC. So I'll go ahead and stop my screen share. My quick housekeeping. Please be sure to put all questions into the Q&A. Again, questions in the Q&A. Let's be sure to, also keep those questions on topic. Let's make sure that we're on topic with what Mike is presenting today. And then when it comes to the chat, that'll be used for any kind of tidbits of information, links, etc., that we'd like to share with you. One of which, Mike, is going to be the EOG, so the Economic Opportunity Grants. I'm going to go ahead and share a link to that so folks can dive in and see the information there. You'll want to be sure that you navigate to the Get Help section, which will share a listing of our webinars. So they're live webinars where you can go, you can ask questions. We're hosting them Monday through Thursday at noon on Mondays and Wednesday. They are in Spanish, and then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, they're in English. And then we have a after hours. So it's like virtual office hours at 5 p.m. every night, Monday through Friday. So I will drop a link to that so that you can learn more about that grant opportunity. Phase 1 is currently open. Phase 2 opens on the 23rd. That's it for me, Mike. Thanks.
Well, a little more detail about phase 1 economic opportunity grant through LA County. The amount of the funding, Lauren?
So I'm sorry, Mike. What did you
What's
say?
the amount of the funding for the phase 1 economic opportunity grant?
So when it 2,500, and you must annual gross must be under revenue, excuse me, must be under 50K, and they're
less
very
than 5
tight.
employees.
Less than 5 employees. There's several. Be sure to look at the eligibility list. You want to make sure that you meet all of the criteria, because even if you say, well, I made 50, 51, you're not eligible. You'll be eligible for second phase, but not phase 1.
And you had to be in business as of December 1st, 2019. Now,
that is correct.
Phase 2 opens on February 23rd. We don't have all the details. Check the website that Lauren's going to put into the chat room. That's for larger businesses. So you might want to check that out. Okay, today we're going to be talking about insurance. Thank you for joining me today. I do prefer a more interactive session. I actually have the ability to unmute you, allow you to talk, but put your questions in your Q&A first. GB can't join us today, so I'm going to be talking about insurance. Oh, GB did join. Hi, GB. Good afternoon. Good, GB.
Good afternoon.
How do you feel today, GB?
Much better, thank you.
There you are. Okay, so we've been through the introduction. We're going to be talking about insurance. Your input will be extremely helpful to this conversation.
Excellent.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And so let me start at the top here. When we talk about insurance, I'm talking about business insurance, not home insurance. It's a completely different topic. Okay. Although you can bundle insurance products together. The average product liability award in 2020 was over $7 million. That's shocking to me. The median was almost $4 million. The average for all claims was $2.5 million. Medical malpractice, 1.8 million, but a product liability claim averages $7 million. Business negligence, $3.1 million. Vehicles, $2.6 million. So, GB, when I hear people say, I can't afford insurance, my business can't afford it, what do you say to them?
Well, if you have the capacity to write a big check, of course you cannot afford it. But if you cannot write a big check, figure a way out.
Yes, and it may not be as expensive as you think it is.
Correct.
Okay. Keep these numbers in mind when you are making that decision as to whether or not you should buy insurance. And by the way, certain professionals are required to carry insurance. They don't have a choice. It's mandatory to maintain their licenses. You need to understand the difference between a claims-made policy and an occurrence policy, occurrence-based policy. So with an occurrence-based policy, you be protected as long as the loss happened while your policy was active. As long as you're insured when the incident occurred, you can file a claim with your insurer. So if you make the claim after the policy is terminated, so long as the loss occurred during the policy period, you're covered. There's a claims-made policies. That's different. So your coverage only kicks in when you file a claim during the policy period. So as long as the insurable event happened after the policy's retroactive date, so the policy may kick back to, let's say, January of 2022, that's fine. That's within the active coverage period, okay? So if you make that's a claims-made policy, you're fine. But if you're trying to make that claim after the termination, then you're not going to succeed unless you have extended coverage. Okay. Understand the difference between the two types of policies, because that's critical when you're making a decision about what type of insurance to buy. Okay. Move from there. So in my mind, everyone should have some general business liability coverage. I think almost everybody should have it. It covers bodily injury, property damage to somebody else's belongings, personal injury, advertising injury. You don't think about advertising injury, but those claims do happen, right? Are you working directly with customers? Are you renting or do you own a building for operations, like a brick and mortar retail space? Are you going into someone's home and providing a service, home health care, right? General business liability is something that, unless you're selling like perhaps t-shirts, e-commerce, selling t-shirts from your home, maybe not. GB, comments about this?
Well, I would say everybody should have insurance, because even if you have a t-shirt, if there could be some sort of a claim that the chemicals you use to process or dye or clean or whatever process a t-shirt, it can also lead to a claim. I've seen that happen. My dad used to be in the clothing business. It can happen.
Right. So all of you have insurance on your cars, because it's mandatory to have insurance on your vehicles in the state of California. All of you should have insurance on your home, because it's mandated if you have a mortgage. And all of you who are renters should have renters insurance, as often it's mandated by the landlord. Those insurance companies often have policies for business. So when I get a request, well, who should I go to get my insurance? We'll start with who you already know. Contact your existing insurance company and ask, and get quotes from others about what they offer you. They can help you out. Insurance is a big topic. By the way, I'm not going into health insurance today. That's a topic in and of itself that could take an hour. Okay, so let's just leave health insurance aside. All right, you do need to have health insurance in place for employees. I'll just leave it at that. That's mandatory. So there's something called professional liability, errors and omissions. People like GB, professionals, attorneys, accountants, lawyers, architects, engineers, they are often required by their licensing boards to have professional liability insurance, otherwise known as E&O, errors and omissions. If you are licensed by some sort of board, check with your board to see if it's mandatory. And even if it's not mandatory, get it. Extremely important. $2.5 million is a lot of money, okay? Because that's the average claim for a professional liability award. Get the insurance. It covers negligence, misrepresentation, inaccurate advice, errors, mistakes, and omissions, personal injury like libel or slander. So if you're a licensed professional service provider, you must get it if it's mandated by your licensing board. And even if you are working for someone else, let's say you're an attorney, a staff attorney at somebody else's law firm, you can still purchase your own individual policy, because what if your employer's policy is it's outside the scope of your employer's policy? So I think it's extremely important for you to carry E&O if you're one of these, even if you're not one of these licenses, if it's something that's provided, like an interior designer. Do you agree, DB?
I do.
Right. So why would someone put a claim against you? You may think you're in the right. You've done everything perfectly correct. You've engineered properly, you put the design together properly, but people are litigious. They will sue you even if it has nothing to do with you and say, you made a mistake. No, you didn't. I made the plans. You signed off on the plans. I explained the plans to you. Nope, you're wrong. I'm suing you. And you have to pay for a lawyer to defend you. So you need professional liability insurance to help cover it. And malpractice insurance is a form of professional liability insurance. Medical professionals must carry this. It covers negligence, improper practice, intentional harm, inaccurate advice, professional mistakes and errors. Key considerations: are you a healthcare provider? Are you some other professional like an attorney or a CPA, right? The licensing board, once again, will mandate it. And again, you can purchase an individual policy that goes above and beyond what your employer has. There's something called this Medical Injury Compensation Reform Act, MICRA. It's been around since 1975. Prior to that, there were very, very large awards given to people who had medical malpractice claims. So this was put into place to control the premiums and control those very large damage awards. It placed a $250,000 cap on non-economic damages, which is pain and suffering. People have tried to change this cap for decades and still hasn't happened yet. Now, read something recently that there might be something going in the legislature to raise it up to 500,000. But as far as I know, right now, this cap is still in place. That is not necessarily true in other states. Other states have different laws. There may not be no cap in a state. But keep that in mind. Right now, as far as I know, there's a $250,000 cap on non-economic damages. So you want to talk about D&O, GB?
Sure. So this is where if you are the director of the or an officer of a company, you have liability because the shareholders elect the board of directors, and the board of directors are supposed to direct the company via the officers, the CEO, the CFO, and such. If the board of directors are not careful in vetting the officers and or the officers are held liable for certain claims that they should have known better, this insurance covers them in that incident, because a lot of people know that LLCs and corporations afford limited liability, but that limited liability, limited being the key word, is only afforded to the shareholders, not the directors, not the officers. So this is why a lot of times people say, well, GB, I started a corporation, now I have limited liability. Yes, limited liability of the shareholder, but you also elected yourself the board of director of your corporation of one and or the member of one LLC, and you are the executive board, you have liability, and this insurance covers your actions as the officer or board of director of your family or small corporation.
Thank you. If you are offered a position to serve on somebody else's board, be sure that they include you in their D&O coverage. Many small businesses, corporations, LLCs, do not carry this because they don't want to pay for it, which is a huge mistake. Because this is also covers, for example, employment malpractice and harassment, reporting errors, all sorts of things that can happen. And understand the different coverages. There's a side A and a side B and a side C. You see it here, okay? So side C coverage is only for the entity. It doesn't cover the officers, right? Do not just accept an assignment on a board or an officer with a company without understanding the risk that you're taking, because your personal assets are at risk, okay? Let me continue on. Product liability. We saw that the average in 2020 for an award was over $7 million. What's product liability? If someone makes a claim against you for a product that you sold, claiming that it harmed them. It may be something as simple as a moving part that failed, like a chain on a bike. So you have a bike store and someone buys the bike and they take it home, and the child is riding the bike on the streets and the chain breaks. It happens. It happened when I was a kid. Fortunately, I was safe. I didn't get hurt. But the chain breaks and the child falls, hits their head, and now has to go to the hospital. That parent or those parents will go after everybody. Doesn't matter that you didn't make the bike. Doesn't matter that you didn't make the chain. They will sue everybody. And that's a product liability claim. Okay, so this type of coverage is important for those selling products. And GB mentioned, what if the clothes cause a problem, right? The dye causes a problem. People are sensitive. There are I forgot about that. Chemical sensitivities, GB. I forgot about that.
Mm-hmm.
So it covers legal fees, medical costs, business damages. Even if a product is used incorrectly, your business can still be liable. So you give all the instructions in the world on how to properly use a fan, how to properly turn on the fan, but someone hurts their finger in the fan because they use it incorrectly and they lose a fingertip. You're at fault. And that's what this covers.
And
so
keep in mind,
go ahead.
Sorry, the laws are designed to protect the consumer from you. I always remind that to my clients. You by default are at mistake. You will be the defendant. You have to prove that you gave clear instructions to the user, because you may claim that the user misused the product Well, were you clear in giving those instructions? So this is what makes business tough, that you're always wrong and you're always on the defense, whether you're small or large. And like you said, Mike, you may have nothing to do with it, but you could be listed as a defendant and you have court fees, you have legal fees. And this is why this insurance is important.
Thank you. Do not think that you're going to escape this just because you're a little guy. Everybody gets sued when things like this happen. And by the way, the cost for an attorney, never mind the award damages, let's just leave that aside. There's also the fees paid for the attorneys, which could be hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars that have to be covered if the attorney takes your case.
Well, not to mention, if your product is shipped across state lines and multiple people in multiple states are claiming damages, guess what? You have to lawyer up in every state, because your lawyer from California will not defend you in New York, Arizona, Nevada, or anywhere else.
There are lots of people who have set up e-commerce businesses because it's easy to do. You set up a site on Shopify and you put your product up there on your website and you start selling the product without thought that, oh my, someone may sue me because they use the product incorrectly or caused them some sort of harm, or they claim it caused them a harm. And yes, then you have to hire an attorney to defend yourself, because you're not going to be able to defend yourself in a court, especially if it's in Alabama. Right? So the insurance company will select the attorney and they'll take over the management of the claim. Now, this is interesting. Business interruption insurance. This actually came important in the pandemic. A lot of businesses were shut down. They couldn't operate for months. And they went to the insurance company and said, well, my business has been interrupted. I want to put a claim in. Insurance company said, no, sorry, nope. Go read your policy. Your policy specifically states that a closure due to a public health hazard is not covered. And those policies were in effect for many businesses that want to put that claim in, and they did not get paid out for business interruption insurance. So this is what this is for. Something happens to your business, like there's a fire, right? And you're going to lose income because your store is shut down or your business is shut down for some particular reason, right? So business interruption insurance. It'll cover your mortgage, your rent, your lease payments, wages, payroll, taxes, business loan payments. It'll cover that. And a relocation to a newer temporary location. What are the key considerations? Will the business be interrupted for some reason? Yeah, fire is obvious, but it might be something less obvious than fire, okay? But GB, what do you have to do? Keep records.
Correct. And also, one thing a lot of people don't think about, I used to travel a lot. I still travel, but not as much as I used to. What a lot of people don't know, the business interruption damages the business owner can come after you. So for example, when I used to travel so much, I used to always rent from a major reputable company like Hertz, Enterprise, whatever, because a lot of times, a lot of people use their personal auto insurance to rent a car and not get the insurance from the agency. The problem is sometimes these locations are franchised and they don't have business interruption insurance. Your insurance company, your car insurance may cover the automobile, but the car rental company may come after you for business interruption. So they're like, fine, you damage our car and your insurance company will repair the car, but the car isn't in shop for 30 or 60 days, especially during the supply chain issues. Well, I'm not able to rent, I'm not able to make money on that rental car. So who's paying for loss of revenue? Well, if the business owner doesn't have business interruption, they may come after you, even if I've seen cases where the insurance company paid for business interruption to the business owner, and then they came after the individual renter because, hey, because of your negligence, because of your mistake, you were held at fault. You caused this damage on which we have to pay the claim, and you have to pay us.
That's a great example. I love that. You don't think of those strands, but
you don't.
That's terrific. Go ahead and talk about key person life insurance.
I'm sorry, did you ask me or?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry about that. The key person, almost any business, small, medium, or large, has one or multiple key people on which the business relies. The old Pareto law, 80-20, right? 20% of the workforce is so productive that if the other 80% didn't show up, okay, business will be interrupted, but not by that much. But if this one person or two or four don't show up, everything grinds to a halt. By the same token, in my business, I'm considered a key person. Thank God I have qualified staff, but if I don't show up for a month, the business will suffer. If I'm hospitalized or something happens, the business will suffer. If I pass away, the business will suffer. So the key person is a company-owned policy that allows the company to collect on this insurance policy if there is a death or disability or mental incompetence in the key executive or key worker. And who is key? The business has to define honestly for themselves. It's not always a top boss. It could be a VP, it could be a line worker, it could be an employee. Who is the key person? Who are the key people? If they don't show up voluntarily or involuntarily, the business may grind to a halt.
Now, if somebody gets incapacitated or a disability, who gets the money, GB?
It's the business that gets the money to find a suitable replacement in a suitable amount of time.
Right. So somebody gets sick, COVID, long COVID, gets sick for months. Somebody COVID for 6 months and they're out. And maybe it's a chief scientist, like the gentleman you see on the screen here, okay? Without that chief scientist, the patent's not going to be filed. You're not going to be able to go to marketplace with the drug. Okay, lots of things are happening. Everything is delayed. And you might have to replace that chief scientist, which could cost, I don't know, a hell of a lot of money for recruiting fees alone. And additional salary, all that other key person life insurance you should have in place. No question about it, especially for those businesses that are corporations and taking on more and more employees and building up your brand and your company. Now, you may not buy all of these insurance policies. You buy the ones that are most relevant to what your situation is, and some of them mandated, like workers' compensation. In the state of California, and I'm only talking about the state of California, I don't know about other states, you may know about other states. It is mandatory for you to carry workers' compensation insurance for your employees. And in most cases, it is not required for you as the owner to carry workers' compensation. The state takes this seriously. It is a felony. You go to state prison if you don't carry workers' compensation insurance for your workers. And by the way, that extends to what you might consider to be independent contractors. And in the state of California, all workers must be employees anyway under AB 5 unless they need an exception. Okay. So do not think that you're going to hire a bunch of independent contractors, not pay payroll taxes, not carry workers' compensation. GB, you want to go deeper into this?
This is one of the only required insurance. A lot of people, for example, think by law you're supposed to have car insurance. No, you don't. There's an exception to almost every insurance. If you're rich enough, if your bank account, your balance sheet is strong enough, you don't have to have that insurance. You can be okay. But this is one insurance that no matter how wealthy you are, no matter how strong your balance sheet is, this is one of the only exceptions that you must have this insurance. And this is a no-fault insurance that protects the worker. Even though they may deliberately hurt themselves, doesn't matter, this insurance policy will pay to take care of the worker. And there's a whole political and there's a whole public policy reason behind that. So this is one of those insurances, one of the only insurance, I believe, that is mandatory. Every other insurance policy has an exception.
Right. So get out of your head that you're going to hire a bunch of independent contractors and they're going to come work for you and you don't have to pay taxes and workers' comp. One of the reasons AB 5 passed a couple of years ago was because the state of California was losing out on funds paid into workers' compensation. and unemployment. So they wanted to close that gap, which is why they passed AB5, which said everybody must be workers. So if you hire everybody as independent contractors and the state audits you, not only will you have to pay back taxes, right, GB, possibly back wages.
Not just that, you have to pay the Social Security, Medicare taxes of your employees. Traditionally, you withhold those taxes from the gross pay of your worker. If you are even either you're audited, or I've seen it happen many times where the worker can file a claim and say, you know what, I was supposed to be an independent contractor, but the employer treated me like an employee. They will be reclassified as employees, and you as an employer will be liable for their share of the Social Security and Medicare taxes. So it can balloon out of hand in a heartbeat.
And they might come back and say, you know what, you should have carried workers' comp insurance because you didn't, you're going to have to pay penalties.
You know, Mike, there's a question that came in that workers' comp is not required for owner employees. Generally speaking, yes, that is true. There are some professions, again, there's an exception. Even though you are an owner employee, you are required to have workers' comp. I think roofers is one of the professions. If you're a roofer, you could be self-employed, maybe a company of one, sole prop, scheduled fee, you are required to have workers' comp. Some profession deemed dangerous enough that you are required to have workers' comp, even as an owner employee.
If you're in a situation where you as an owner is not required to carry workers' comp, then GB, what's your recommendation?
You better have a strong balance sheet and money in the bank.
Or a separate policy that
Correct.
covers you.
Correct.
Right? Or both,
Correct.
by the way. Yes.
You know, this is, I'm going to just make a personal comment here. This is one of the reasons why I always encourage my SBDC clients and my private clients to have a business plan. It's very exciting. It's very sexy. It's very fun to start a business. But as we know, majority of the businesses fail in this country. And for a large part is because of either running out of cash or they have some sort of a claim that they cannot fulfill, and they didn't have room in their budget to buy the insurance. Having these insurance policies will cost you. And this is where I always encourage my clients to price your products and services so you can cover your overhead. Because otherwise, you're just one complaint, one lawsuit, one hiccup away from literal bankruptcy or insolvency.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, I did put in health insurance here, but this is a very large topic. The Affordable Care Act, the ACA, was passed under President Obama, and it made it mandatory for businesses with more than 50 full-time employees to offer health insurance plans. Has this changed, DB, that you're aware of?
Not too much. The majority is like the penalty for not having insurance on the individual mandate, but that's what went away. That if you didn't have, so of course California still charges you a penalty if you don't have, unless you have an exception. So there are a couple of exceptions. For example, you could be part of a ministry, you could be part of some sort of a private coverage, or you may not have enough money. But as far as the employers are still required to extend if they are large enough to have health insurance, but the individual mandate is what was revised and the penalty repealed on the federal.
Look at the last comment here. You cannot deduct employer contribution towards an employee's individual health plan. So that's still true, DB?
That is true. Now there are a few exceptions, for example, the QSERA down there, but yeah, those are exceptions, but otherwise it's better to have. And that's a tricky part. I see a lot of times people have individual policies that they're deducting on their S-Corp returns, whether it's LLC or corporation. That's a big no-no. The entity can only deduct premiums on a policy that the entity owns. If you own your own health insurance, your company, in very few exceptions, unless it has a proper HRA or QSERA account, it cannot take a deduction. You are under reporting your taxable income, which in essence, you are filing a fraudulent return because you think, oh, it's my policy, but I'm self-employed, so my company will pay for it. Doesn't work that way.
Right. This is a very complicated topic, and you see the reference there, the qualified small employer health reimbursement accounts. As always, talk to an expert. Talk to somebody who knows this information quite well. All right, accounts receivable insurance. Actually, you have a question? Oh, we're not. There's something about 1099s in the Q&A, GB.
Yeah, so actually that was revised in January. So this is only for 1099K, which is only if you're going to receive a 1099K. So December bulletin said one thing, it was revised. But like I said, even if you made money, even if you don't get the 1099K, report the income, because a 1099K doesn't help you and me. That revision only helps the credit card merchant processors that they have to issue a 1099K or not. So it doesn't change anything what we covered last week when it comes to taxation for you and me, because we don't issue 1099Ks. Unless you are a merchant processor, you do not issue 1099K. It doesn't affect 1099 NEC or 1099 miscellaneous. 1099Ks are only issued by the credit card processor, but whether you are issued one or not, you have to report the income. It doesn't absolve you at all. You cannot say, well, I never got a 1099K. Doesn't matter. You are still held liable under your corporation, LLC, or your personal Schedule C.
Thank you. And please keep the questions to the topic at hand. Anything that's out of topic, we're going to refer you to an SBDC advisor in a separate session. So accounts receivable insurance. We all have been through a situation. Anyone in business has been through a situation where someone hasn't paid. You provided a service, you sent the product, and they just don't want to pay you. It happens. It's just the way life works. Okay. They might have their very good reasons for not paying you. You try to work it out with them, as you always should. You offer them a payment plan, you give them a discount, and sorry, I know it's happened to you, it's happened to everybody else in business, right?
Correct.
So what do? You can go to small claims code if it's below a certain level. You can bring some small claims code. I have a separate workshop on that. And there's a process involved, and then you have to collect on it if you win, which is a whole nother process. If you have accounts receivable and it's documented, you can have accounts receivable insurance, otherwise known as trade credit insurance. What that does is it will pay you for that receivable if somebody refuses to pay you. It's available to you. Now, there's all sorts of considerations, like what if you have to document your efforts to collect, you have to document what you provided, you have to prove that it's an appropriate accounts receivable. There has to be all sorts of proof that this is a proper receivable. And if you can't get anywhere with anyone, then you can possibly make a claim and collect that money from the insurance company. And then the insurance company will take it over and go after the person. Okay. This is available, especially for those situations where perhaps doing B2C. And there might be a lot of situations where consumers don't pay you for one reason or another. You want to add to this, GB?
Not right now. Sorry, I was asking a question. So I think you did a very good job. So we can move on.
So this is a little different. Inventory / stock insurance, right? So let's say you store product in a small storage area, not this large warehouse you see on screen, but maybe you have a small storage area where you're storing product. It gets damaged. Earthquake, fire, flood, right? You lose the value of that stock. And stock is cash. It's money that you rest in a product that you want to resell. Holding inventory is not necessarily a good idea because it's cash tied up in inventory. So what do you do if that inventory gets damaged? It could be raw materials. It could be consigned goods. It could be finished goods. Consigned goods are goods that others are placing with you for you to sell on their behalf, and you get a piece of the sale price. That's what consignment. There are consignment stores all over. If that consignment is damaged, now the person who placed that consignment good with you is going to be upset because they're not going to. They're going to make a claim against you for the value of that good. That's where this type of insurance kicks in. This is not covered under property damage, real estate property damage. Okay, you can only get this if you buy this specific insurance. You have to know, first of all, you should be carrying inventory. You're not carrying inventory here, okay? And you have to look at the value of what you're carrying versus the cost of insurance. And you have to determine what is the risk of a loss and how much you're going to be out if that inventory is lost. So this is available to you through an appropriate insurance company.
One thing I'll
Go
add, be careful what you buy, because sometimes this may be covered under some of the insurance policy, but this is why it's important to compare apples to apples. You may get a couple of quotes for an insurance policy, and one may be cheaper, but it may cover fewer things. So this is why you're right, property damage generally doesn't cover it. Sometimes a general liability may extend some coverage for inventory stock. Just like if you were to get homeowners insurance, it will give you extended coverage for your personal belongings. But if you have an antique gun or jewelry or gold coins or watch, you have to specifically list it on your homeowner's policy. So this is important that you compare apples to apples as you're comparing quotes from multiple insurance companies.
Thank you, GB. Appreciate that. Contractors building risk insurance. So hurricanes happened in Florida last year, and there was hurricanes in Texas. And there's been all sorts of natural disasters. When that occurs, all sorts of people are affected, including contractors. So contractors may be in the process of putting up a home, putting up a building or complex. They might have materials at the site. They might have forklifts and scaffolds and fencing, etc., or temporary structures in place. If they don't have this type of insurance in place, then those contractors lose it all. They lose everything at that site. They're not going to be able to replace that equipment with any money coming from an insurance company. So this contractors building risk insurance is available to contractors to protect them against loss when impacted through a natural disaster or something else that ruins their equipment and materials, etc. It also covers labor costs, the construction equipment. Standard property insurance does not cover this, not for contractors. They have to have a special policy in place. So people might be saying, that'll never happen to me. We never get earthquakes. Earthquakes happen in New England and Boston and Washington, D.C. All right. We'll never get we'll never get hail. Hail happened this week in Arizona and Phoenix. And hail can damage property. Okay. Don't ever say it'll never happen to me. You talk about commercial auto insurance.
Commercial auto can be tricky because things are always changing. From what I'm hearing from my clients who are in the insurance business, even if you're driving your personal vehicle for a business meeting and you get in a car accident, the insurance company, if they find out, they will deny or they can deny coverage. Now, of course, a good, strong, reputable company may not care. But if you claim that, hey, I had laptops and printers and tools in my car, they may deny coverage for that. So the commercial auto could be either a standalone product, or it could be a rider on your personal insurance that covers commercial use of a personal vehicle or even personal use of a commercial vehicle. So of course, if you have a utility truck, you want to have separate commercial auto insurance on it because you may always be carrying tools and equipment and other raw materials or finished goods in your utility van, truck, or something else. But even if you have a personal vehicle, a personal pickup, or a sedan that you happen to use regularly, this is where the things come in, right? If you use your personal vehicle every now and then for business, it's one thing. If you use it all the time, it's a different thing. So this is where the regular versus unusual use comes into play, and the commercial auto insurance can be handy depending upon if it's a standalone policy or a rider on some other policy.
Check if you're, many businesses lease vehicles for all sorts of reasons, including tax reasons. Check your lease.
Yeah,
There might be specific requirements regarding the level of coverage you have to carry. Not just that you have to have it.
yeah.
Or-
I drive my car to client meetings a lot of times, so I have a rider on my personal policy because I carry my expensive laptop and a lot of client documents, so they need to know that I'm moving that stuff around. If a client brings paperwork to my office, not a big deal. We use a lot of electronic exchanges to send and receive documents, but I have some clients who prefer paper, and I need to have proper coverage if my car is broken into while their tax return is in my trunk. That's a big liability.
It sure is. Now, let's say you're not using your vehicle, GB's may not be using the vehicle all the time for business. But even so, you want to deliver a product or have somebody deliver a product for you to a client. That doesn't mean you shouldn't carry commercial auto insurance.
Correct.
Go ahead, GB.
No, please go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, so because the vehicle is being used for a commercial purpose.
Correct.
And if that person gets into an accident, or if you get in an accident while you're engaged in business, then your personal auto insurance may not cover that.
Correct.
Because your personal auto insurance policy is not there to cover commercial activities.
Not
right?
to mention, if you have an employee, even off the clock, even after business hours, driving your personal vehicle for whatever reason, or even their personal vehicle, this happened to one of my family members, driving their personal vehicle to conduct just a task that they volunteered for or you asked them to do, you better have workers' comp, because not every injury to them during that accident or some other event, the workers' comp will have to, because they're doing work for you. They are on the clock, even though they're off the clock. So this is where insurance companies need to divvy up the liability, and it may come up, well, wait a second. How often does this employee drive your car to run this errand while they're on clock or not? And if the employee says, oh yeah, I do it all the time, you better pray that they didn't listen to that, they didn't document it, because if they say, oh, I do that all the time for my boss, you could be in a heap of trouble.
Right.
And you can't tell people to lie, right, Mike? You can't just tell them, hey.
Perjury, you can't, no,
exactly.
don't suborn perjury. Never
Yeah.
suborn perjury. All right, so cargo and freight insurance. This covers damage and lost cargo. And things happen while things are being transported from like China or wherever you're buying product from. Accidents, natural disasters, piracy. There are pirates. I don't know if you all know this, but piracy still occurs. Okay.
Yeah.
Acts of war. I mean, Ukraine war has huge repercussions. And China will invade Taiwan either this year, next year, or the year after. When that happens, people are going to be hurt, not just in Taiwan, not just the Chinese shoulders, but commercial vessels may be attacked. Okay. Understand the difference between carrier liability and insurance policy. So carrier insurance covers loss caused by fault or neglect of the carrier, the transporter. Okay. Carrier insurance covers the cost of the shipment, but not for the value of the goods. Important point. Cargo insurance has more comprehensive coverage. Okay. It covers against damages or losses, including the value of the goods. So if you're having something transported in the transporter, the carrier says, oh, we got carrier insurance. So what? That doesn't help you any. You want cargo insurance. Okay. And we're talking about cargo insurance, which is used to refer to goods transported by land or air. Freight insurance is used for goods transported by trucks. Understand the difference between carrier insurance and cargo insurance. And don't think that because you're buying product from China, that supply chain will always be there. It may not be there a year from now. Always have a plan B. Data breach insurance. This is a huge topic now. It's a relatively new type of insurance. And unfortunately, we're living in a world where this data breaches happen. Very large data breaches happen. Millions and millions of records stolen. It's a subset of cybersecurity insurance. So there's something called first-party insurance, which applies to the company that bought the policy. Okay, there's forensics and fines, and penalties, and monetary loss, etc., that is covered in the cost to notify customers when you have a first-party data breach insurance policy. A third-party insurance policy concerns the affected parties outside of the insurance company, like legal expenses, damages, claims by customers. So what are the considerations? What's the likelihood of you losing control of your data for a data breach, right? How sensitive is the information? Think about an e-commerce site that collects customers' emails and personal information and credit cards. That's you possibly doing e-commerce. You are subject to a data breach. And if that information gets out, you can be sued. And you might lose in court because you did not put the proper procedures and securities in place. Doesn't matter, it's just you doing e-commerce from your home. You're still at risk for data breaches and claims against you. 60% of small businesses close permanently within 6 months of suffering a breach. That's you, okay? The average cost of a single data breach spans everywhere between 1.25 million to over $8 million on average. This includes ransomware, regulatory fines, penalties, lawsuits, reputation harm. What am I telling you? Carry data breach insurance. TB?
I agree.
Yeah. And don't think you're not going to be targeted, because I'm targeted. I'm just doing a little bit. GB is targeted. We're all targeted.
Actually, small businesses target even more because they know they don't have the insurance, they don't have the security, they don't have the training. So they're targeting small businesses to get to the big one, because the big businesses are fortified. They can still be breached. I mean, look at Equifax was breached. So, but the smaller ones are the vulnerable, and they can sometimes just play the volume game.
Yeah. Now, it's a subset of cybersecurity insurance, which covers ransomware extortion. There's something called denial of service attacks. So many cybersecurity policies cover business email compromise, which is monetary loss due to fraudulent wire transfers. I have a client this happened to. He lost $60,000 because the hackers hacked into his email, and this is an owner of a business, and sent an email to his accounting person who had signing privileges and wire transfer privileges. In over 6 months, she sent $60,000 to these scammers because it appeared as if the email was coming from the owner to instruct this woman to send money for payment. He has cybersecurity insurance that will cover the claim. If he did not, he'd be out $60,000. That's a lot of money to a small business. And sometimes it's much more than that. You need cybersecurity insurance, especially if you have employees, okay? It covers the insurance company. You know, the policies cover the insurance company for losses from an attack on a third party, such as a vendor, okay? There's identity theft, fraudulent use of the digital identity, and they might establish credit or illegally signed contracts, and you're on the hook for that, okay? Damaged reputation. He just talked about Equifax. I don't know how many people want to go back to Equifax. Based upon what you just told me, GB, I'm like, do I really want to use Equifax? Do I trust them with my data? I may not have a choice.
Correct.
Right?
I mean, anybody can be hacked. I have a client who had $1,000 taken out of her account just last week on Friday or Saturday. And she actually had a California DMV license with her photo, but my client's information.
Oh.
And it was at a major bank. in person and she got the cash.
Wow.
Just happened last week.
Horrible. Now, Viva
People
says
are
with
creative. People are good. I mean, they used to say if Al Capone had put his expertise to good ventures, he could have built the next GM.
right.
So people are creative.
Yeah. The FBI discourages victims from paying ransoms because there is no guarantee that the hackers will remove the software or sort of data. True. I get these comments all the time. Pay us or you get it too, GB. You know, we're going to ransomware. It's up to you to decide whether or not to pay it. Okay. It depends upon the value to do. But don't ever think that the hackers will give you back the data. They may choose not to. I know school districts have been hit. There was a pipeline that was hit earlier, right? Last year, GB?
Mm-hmm.
And I think they did pay the ransom.
And they could leave some malware where they can periodically lock you out and ask for more money.
Right. You might want to have an extra computer which has all your data. You know, there are things you can do. Talk to a cybersecurity expert to help protect you in case of loss of data. Intellectual property insurance. So this is, let's say you have a trademark, right? And you want to protect your trademark, or you inadvertently infringe on somebody else's trademark, right? This will protect you in case of a claim. By the way, that can happen anywhere.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's so easy to set up a business, a DBA, an LLC, corporation. It's so easy. Very few people bother to check against the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office to see whether or not there's infringement against a trademark.
You know, this is actually one of my favorite topics. Sorry to interrupt you, Mike. It's people always tell me that, hey, GB, I'm gonna go get a patent. Why? So if somebody copies me, I'll sue them. Really? Do you have the money? Because an IP attorney, intellectual property attorney, does not work on contingency. And what a lot of people don't know, the average cost to fight or defend an intellectual property dispute is in millions. So if you don't have $1 million to pay legal fees, what's the point of getting a patent, which is, by the way, as you and I know, is a public domain? If somebody's going to copy it, what are you going to do? You're going to sue them? Do you have the money for it? So this is insurance. If you have a certain patent or a certain trademark that you really want to protect, the insurance will lawyer up for you to fight it for you.
Great point, GP. If you file a patent, that means you told everybody in the world
how to do
something, right?
People in China will copy you. People in India will copy you. People in New York, Chicago, everywhere, right? And you got to lawyer up in each state to protect your idea. Good luck.
There's something called a trade secret, where you don't actually publish it and you do not have a patent. And that way you're keeping it in-house.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you gotta lawyer up to even do that, or you cannot just do that on LegalZoom, right, Mike?
No. And by the way, no one ever should ever go to an aggregator like LegalZoom to set up your business. Okay, I always go to a professional business attorney or a professional like GB that knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
All right, commercial crime and forgery. So the example that I explained to you with my friend who suffered injury because of that hack, because of the fraud, he could also make a claim against commercial crime and forgery. So this covers employee dishonesty, forgery of a check, all right, theft of money and securities, burglary, robbery, computer fraud coverage. Always conduct background checks on applicants. People lie, and some people are very good online, right? Train employees on all their appropriate procedures, right? What they should do in case of a robbery. I can tell you right now, retail stores tell their employees do not interfere with robberies because they don't want their employees injured or harmed in any way. Report it to the police later, but do not interfere with a robbery that's occurring. And they don't want to take the liability. Never, no employee should ever endanger themselves by trying to protect property. And that's why the large chains will never, ever, they will fire people who try to stop a robbery in action. And that has happened. Even if they've been successful, they'll still fire them. Keep it safe on site. I don't know. How do you feel about keeping cash on site, GB?
It depends. For a cash-rich business, they need to. And I always encourage all of my clients to keep some cash, because if there's a power outage, you need to get it around. Venmo won't work, Zelle won't work, your ATM may not work. So some cash is required. But if you are a cash extensive business, strip clubs, cash, the car washes, laundromats, you have to secure the cash. Somehow, some way.
Right. Make sure there's at least 2 signatures. So if you're partners in a business, you want to keep a check on each other, right? Make sure there's 2 signatures on checks and wires, so that one person is taking the money while you're all working the other way. All right. Ask for the bank confirmation of all wires, and put in alarms and security cameras, gates, etc. Do all that stuff you should be doing to protect your property, right? Keep everything well lighted. By the way, if you don't do those things and one of your employees gets hurt, or a customer or a vendor, they can sue you for failure to take proper steps for security. Crypto insurance. This is an emerging field. There's very few people that offer crypto insurance, especially now, given what happened in the crypto world. But it's out there. People do lose the codes. They forget their keys. And now there's coverage to protect against that. We've all heard of cases where people lost millions and millions of dollars because they forgot the code for their vault, for the crypto vault, right? Hardware may not be covered though. And this is a fairly new type of insurance. Not a lot of people carry it. You have to search around for it. And that's it. So we've come to the end of the hour. Thank you for your time today. GB, thank you for answering questions. Is there a particular topic you want to cover next week?
Actually, I won't be here next week. I'm traveling, but the following week I will cover the EV tax credit for vehicles bought last year versus this year and going forward, whether to take that credit on your business taxes or on the personal. We'll cover that in 2 weeks from today.
Okay, would you please answer the question on the Q&A before we go? I believe what I will probably cover next week is, well, I'll have to think about it. Is there a particular topic that you want covered? Put it in the chat room. Let's address that right now, because I have an entire content library that we can talk about. So is there any particular issue that anyone wants to cover next week? If not, I'll decide next week what we want to cover. I'm not seeing anyone saying anything, so I'll cover a particular business topic relevant to you next week. GB, can you handle that question in the Q&A?
Actually, this is just an opinion question. I'll just say that, you know what, it's hard to give an opinion on whether the policy is worth it or not unless you look at the policy in detail. So in general, yeah, if the policy is no longer going to cover enough stuff, the premium is not justified. But that's a very thorough opinion that must be done with an insurance expert, in my opinion.
Thank you. You can always make an appointment with us, and we can refer you to outside sources to help you make a decision. Right? We're not insurance experts. We're not insurance brokers, right? But we know people who are.
Exactly.
All right, thank you so much, GB.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mike.
Bye, everybody.